Welcome back to Dr. Supercoach YouTube. You're on with Pig, and I've got one final video for you before round one. My breakout candidates video. If you haven't watched all 10 of my preseason Pig's Pen series, I'd recommend you go do that. That was pretty good. But let's get into this one. So last year I researched potential breakouts and it was pretty successful, I think, in identifying breakouts to guys like Lloyd Meek, Tom De Koning, Darcy Cameron, Harry Sheezel. To a lesser extent, guys like Chad Warner and Hayden Young, they maybe weren't quite as good as I thought they'd be, but, I suggested they'd be pretty good, and I think they went all right. So this year, again, I've had a lot of requests for my 2025 breakout candidate video this preseason, so, here we are. Let's do it. How I've done this is I've looked back over the last 6 years of data and found out, what players need to break out and become a really good pick or a really good SuperCoach player. And I found there were different things that Ruckman need than other positions need. I mean, that makes sense. Defenders, mids and forwards aren't going to getting many hitouts. But for Ruckman, I looked at everyone that from the first year that they didn't average 100, then the first year that they averaged 100 SuperCoach. That's my benchmark for a breakout for Ruckman is 100 SuperCoach. So I looked at all these players. I'm talking like Tim English, Rowan Marshall, Nankervis, Briggs, heaps of players, all the guys I mentioned last year like Meek and Tom De Koning and Darcy Cameron, all of them before their 100 breakout season. So what were their career averages before they had that breakout? And they all had these same things in common. They all scored in a variety of ways. They weren't really one-dimensional. So, they all were at least able to get, and you can see it on the screen there, my filters that I've been able to generate from this. Every single Ruckman over the last 6 years that went on to average 100, in their career before that, they were able to average 9.1 disposals a game, 1.6 marks, 0.6 clearances, 2.3 tackles, 2.2 contested possessions. They were able to get 9 hitouts a game and 0.1 goals a game. And that's a lot of these guys, that's even playing as the backup ruck. So this is like Cherry playing backup to Goldstein, or it's English playing backup to Steph Martin. It just gives they're pretty low bars, but it just gives an indicator that these guys have the tools and the potential to be able to, when they get the right role and, they're old enough and mature enough, if they've got these career averages, I wouldn't be surprised to see these guys average 100, if they then get the role. And if we look at it from the defenders, mids and forwards, I kind of lump these together because it was all quite similar. A lot of these are really low bars, like 0.2 clearances a game. I mean, every midfielder is going to get that. But even what I found is even Jeremy McGovern or Luke Ryan in their non-premium years, even they can do that. So it's kind of, if you can't do that, there's something going wrong and you're not probably going to average 100 SuperCoach. So with the defenders, mids and forwards, I actually want them, averaging 100 SuperCoach is good, but I'm actually looking for someone that can break into that 105 plus range. So for Ruckman, I'm looking for someone that can go 100 for the first time. Defenders, mids and forwards, I'm looking for someone that has never even gone 100. So maybe their best average is in the 90s or less. Going even bigger than that and going into 105 range. So, everyone, and I'm talking like Sarong, Goulden, Green, Butters, Rosie, even last year guys like Nick Martin, Sam Flanders, Harry Sheezel, Hayden Young, all of these guys, so over the last 6 years, they've all had career averages of what's up on the screen there. So career averages of 14 disposals a game, 2.4 marks, 0.2 clearances, 1.3 tackles, and 5.4 contested possessions per game. They all had those career averages prior to breaking out. So you can see they've got a bit of a fantasy game about them, but they can score in a variety of ways. And like I said, they're really low bars. But if you can't do that, then I think you're in a bit of trouble and you're probably not that good a player, not going to average 100. So that's where I sit with them. So looking back through the 6 years of data, I worked out what everyone had in common that became a breakout. And then I've used those stats to filter, look through every single player that currently plays in the AFL, run those numbers as a filter, and then it gives me a bunch of names that meet those criteria. And then I obviously deleted the ones that I've already averaged 100 because I've already broken out. So here we go. These are the Ruckman that meet this filter that I think, genuinely have a potential to average 100 in a season, but haven't done it yet. And there's a few names here I'm going to rule off straight off the bat, like Ned Moyle, Kieran Strawn, and Toby Conway. I'm not going to recommend them to you as a breakout candidate. They'd just be silly. They're either injured, they're not playing, they're not best 22, whatever it is, we'll rule them out. Bailey Williams is an interesting one because he has had the number one rock role for a couple of years, but I think he's just too young and too raw at the moment. Like he's still in his early 20s, and he's been the number one ruck in his early 20s, and that's often sometimes too young. So I'm not going to recommend him because now we know he's going to be playing forward a lot and not being the main ruck. So we'll rule him out. But I will chat to you about the other four because I think there are some good names there. So if we go through it, I'm going to break it down into people that I have low confidence that they could average 100, medium confidence, and high confidence. So as I said, what I'm defining here as a breakout for a ruckman is someone that has never averaged 100, averaging 100 for the first time. I've got low confidence that Oscar McInerney or Luke Jackson do that. They could. I'm putting them here because if they did, it probably wouldn't surprise me. Like if you came to me at the end of the year and said, hey, Oscar McInerney averaged 100.5, I'd be like, yeah, cool. I'm not surprised. But also, I'm not excited about it. Like that's not keeping me up at night. So these two, and for different reasons, Oscar McInerney, great ruckman, fairly good player, probably a bit underrated. He's had seasonal averages of 89, 94, and 96 in his last 3 years. That sees him inching closer to that 100 mark. Not a classic pick by any means, but I wouldn't be surprised if you average a flat ton. Then Luke Jackson, obviously this is a big one. We know he's got 100 plus potential if solo ruck. But Freo have made it very clear that they prefer a 2-ruck approach, with Jackson being the second option. We do know if he had a run of games as sole ruck, then we become very interested. But until then, we wait. Like when he's playing this forward role, chopping out in the midfield and ruck a bit, averaging 100. Like I said, he could do it this year, but it wouldn't be by much, I'd say, if he's got the role he has. Then we go to the medium confidence. So I've actually got medium confidence that Matt Flynn breaks out to be 100 plus ruckman. I probably don't think it's going to be this year, which is why he's in the medium bracket, not the high. But look, Matt Flynn averaged 100. No, he didn't. He averaged 86 across his 3 years at the Giants, and that was despite ruck sharing plenty of games. I really do think he has 100 plus average upside in years to come. And like I said, I probably don't think it's this year, just due to his preseason injuries and learning a new system at a new club. But I really wouldn't be shocked to see Matt Flynn put up a 90 average this year and then putting up tons next year. That's where I actually think he's a really, really good player. Like these filters that I've set, he clears them all pretty comfortably. He's actually a really good player, and I think he gets a bit of heat for, people think he's a bit of a lumber and doesn't rack up many disposals, and that's true, but he's still going at 11 or 12 disposals a game. That's more than guys like Sherry was before Sherry's breakout. So he's not that bad, I think. And if you want more info on Matt Flynn, I joined the coaches panel for a podcast of the 50 most relevant. I think Matt Flynn might have been number 47 or 46 or something. So if you want to hear me talk about Matt Flynn for over half an hour, go find that podcast because I'm not going to redo it here. But I'm a big fan of Matt Flynn, and I think he's got 100 plus breakout potential. I don't think the 100 plus average is going to come this year, like I said, but it's in his future. And then my number one ruckman that I'm recommending that could break out, and I'm still keeping it medium confidence. I'm not super hot that he gets there this year, but I actually think he's going to go very, very, very close this year. So Jordan Sweet, he's actually really underrated as a hit-out ruckman. He's one of those guys that actually does win a lot of hit-outs. He averages 30 hit-outs per game over his career. That's up there. And his career is only 28 AFL games old, by the way. I thought he played a lot more than 28, so he's still learning. He's still warming into it. He himself said that this offseason he'll be given much more of a license to roam the ground and hunt for marks. His second preseason with Port now, getting used to their system. I think a lot of people are going to be really surprised at what Sweet scores this year. I have him here in the medium confidence range because when I've done my projections, I'm actually projecting him at 99. So I probably am not quite ready to say that he'll be 100 or pushing into 105. But, hopefully surprises me with triple figures over the course of this season. And priced in the 80s. There's a fair bit of classic value upside, I think, but I think it's more the draft sleeper that people aren't thinking of. I think if you're in a 10 or 12 team league, you could just punt the rucks and then get this guy right at the end of the draft and get a really, really solid ruckman. So Jordan Sweet is my number one ruck breakout candidate, but having said that, he's still only in my medium confidence. I don't have anyone in the top tier in high confidence for the ruckman. Last year I did. I had some guys like Tom de Koning that I had as high confidence, but this year I'm just sitting in the mediums with the ruck. I don't think we've really got someone that's going to blow us off the park. Then I looked at the other players that are not ruckmen, so we're talking defenders, mids and forwards now, and there are a heap of players that make this filter. Like I said, it wasn't a really restrictive filter. It's just, the way I see it, anyone that makes this filter is pretty good at footy. Let's put it that way. So they've got the skills and the game, but that's not enough. You need a good role. Like, you need to be a number 1 or 2 CBA mid, maybe a 1 or 2 kicking guy at your club to be able to put the is good at footy together with the has good role, I think is what you really need to average 105, and that's what I'm looking for here. So this is all the players that met my filter that have never averaged 100 SuperCoach, and I've got it here as a video, so if you want to pause it, and I'd recommend just pause it and have a look through these names, because you might find someone that I haven't had a chat about. You might go, oh, actually no, I think Ollie Florent's in for a big one here. I don't necessarily think that, but you might. So have a pause, have a read of it. But these are the players that have never averaged 100 that met my filter, my is good at footy filter. But yeah, like I said, not all of them have the role. So now in the next part of the video, I'm going to go through the ones that I've picked out of here that I think have the role and is good at footy. So therefore has good chance to break out. So that's where I'm going with this. So I'll start by going with my low confidence breakout players. So I've got 14 players here that I've picked out that I think are really good at football, and that is shown by meeting the filter. They accumulate the ball, they get marks, they get tackles, contested possessions, they score in a lot of ways. But I think all of these I'm not willing to commit to tell you that they will average 105, which is what I want from these players. So for a variety of reasons, I mean, if Nick Vlaston didn't have Jaden Short and he was just Jeremy McGoverning it and taking all the kick-ins, I think he absolutely would, but he's not, so I don't think so. De Goey, injury history, and maybe being pushed down the pecking order with new recruits, not sure. Jai Simpkin, if he was a number 1 midfielder, he would easily average 100. He's a gun, but he's not the number 1 midfielder. Jacob Hopper, injuries. Yeah, actually injuries is the main one because he does have a good CBA role. Liam Baker, if he had the Jeremy McGovern kick-in role, he would go 105, no worries. He's a very good player, but I just don't see that happening. Jack Bowes is someone I draft that's a late pick in my drafts every year because I'm just thinking he's going to get midfield clock, because if he does, I think he's going to go bananas one year. But at Geelong, yeah, they just seem to use him as a sub a lot as well. Trent Rivers, if he had a number 1 or number 2 CBA role, I'd be saying locking in 105, but judging by the preseason, he's actually number 4 in the pecking order at Melbourne, so no good. Luke Jackson, it's actually really interesting. Luke Jackson made the filter for rucks, but he also made the filter as a midfielder. He's the only one to do that, so he's very, very good at footy. Even if he was playing as a full-time midfielder. If he was a number 1 CBA guy, but not rucking, but just the number 1 CBA midfielder, he could average 105 as a midfielder, I reckon. He's that good. Jai Caldwell and Tom Powell I kind of put in the same basket, where they're probably at that, I don't know, what do we say, the number 3 or number 4 midfielder at their club. They're elite talents. They're going to be very good. They are very good footballers, but they probably don't quite have the role to go 105. Mitch Hinge was actually someone in my breakout video last year. He was a surprise packet that I recommended as having a breakout and could push that 100-105 role. I was wrong with him because he didn't actually get that many kickouts. I thought he was going to be the main distributor back there. So that's why I'm still a bit unconfident with him. I'll put him in the low confidence, but has the potential to break out category. So if he got all the if he got all the kick-ins and just pigged it up back there, then he's got the potential, he's got the skills to average 105. I just don't think the role's quite there. Jake Saligo, the same as probably Caldwell and Powell. He's an awesome talent. But is he going to be a top 1 or 2 CBA mid at the Crows? I think that's what he would need to average 105, and I just don't think that's going to happen. Will Ashcroft, this is one that could get close, but I'm not willing to say he's going to average 105. There aren't many clubs that have 3 midfielders average 100, and I think Neil and Dunkley, everyone's going to agree they're going to average 100, so I don't think there's really room for Ashcroft to average 105. I think he could be in the 90s, maybe even high 90s, but I don't think it's 100 yet. And then George Wardlaw, injured preseason, so who knows. I did try and predict the North Melbourne midfield, and I thought he would probably be the number 2 CBA mid when healthy. But, interrupted preseason, you're not picking him. Maybe just one to keep an eye on. Like if you're going for a keeper league or something, grab him, of course. But I think he's absolutely got the game and the potential to average 105. I just really don't think it's going to be this year. So now I've got 9 players that I've got at least medium or high confidence that will average 105. So we're going to start with my medium confidence players, and this is my number 3 medium player is Finn Callaghan. Finn is, tipped by many to break out this year, and I agree that he's going to average triple figures, probably. Like that still might be a big call. It'd be a big boost in his scoring, but I think he can get there. But I'm not sure he's going to push 105 that I've set my benchmark to be considered a keeper, a breakout here. So that's the question. He hasn't really been a high tackler before, and he's only averaged 2.7 tackles a game. That's the metric I really want to see Finn Callaghan improve on to become a knockout pick. So, he gets a lot of disposals, and he gets around the ground and gets marks, and even gets some contested possessions, but tackling is where I really want to see him lift his game. And hopefully that will just come with more CBAs, which people are tipping will happen for him. I'm probably just not quite ready to say that he's 105 yet. If he's 99, 100, 101, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. But and at his price, you probably don't need him to be 105, let's be clear. It's not that I'm saying that these guys won't be a good pick at all. As I said, what I'm trying to do here is pick guys that have never gone 100 and pick guys that will go 105 plus. And kind of get into that, the 110 plushes we'll probably call the uber premiums, but this is like the next tier. Can Flynn get into that next tier and join, say, like the Rosies and the Livers and kind of those guys of the world? I'm not sure yet, but happy to be proven wrong. And then my number 2 medium confidence breakout player is Harry Perryman. So he's tipped to be Collingwood's number 2 CBA guy this year, or at least while Jordan De Goey's out. So number 2 CBA guy, that is a good role. That's enough of a role. That is combining the role and that is good at footy metric. So with that role, he should have access to plenty of tackles. I'm very confident in him going in 100 plus. I think this season 100 plus is absolutely in his wheelhouse, and he's going to be a great starting pick is my tip. A little flag for everyone that Collingwood actually have the hardest run for midfielders in the first 6 games. It's absolutely brutal. So I could actually see a lot of people starting Perryman and then a lot of casuals not realising that he's only scoring 90s or 80s even because of the really hard run and jumping off. Whereas I think if you start Perryman, you probably just hold him to his mid-season bye or something like that. So I could see a lot of people jumping off, and I think that would be the wrong move. But I've got him here in my medium confidence breakout because I'm not that confident that he pushes way past 105. The main reason being is because we haven't really seen him be able to combine high disposals and high tackles in the same game. So he's had a lot of times where he's either got high disposals playing half back but hasn't really added the tackles, or he's gone in the midfield and he's got a lot of tackles but hasn't really done disposals. And even in the preseason, he had a lot of tackles and people were still a bit upset that he only had 20 disposals. But 20 disposals is fine when you're also getting 10 tackles a game. So he also hasn't had this prime midfield role before. Even when he was playing midfield at GWS, he was behind guys like Green and Kelly and Canelio and whatnot. So he was never this number 2 CBA guy. So, there is a chance he goes 105. So that's why I've got him here in medium confidence. But I think it's probably more likely We see Harry Perriman moves maybe like a 102, 103 average. So that's probably why I've got him here as medium, not quite high. And then my number one medium confidence breakout player is Will Day. This one might raise a few eyebrows after Will Day's round zero game. He dominated Sydney for the first half, had 113 Supercoach at halftime, and people are going to be sitting here like, "Well, you're an idiot only having him medium." Of course he's breaking out. This is the easiest pick in the game. And I do love Will Day. I recommended him last year as a breakout candidate. He let me down. He didn't get there. A lot of that was injury related, but it wasn't just injury related, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But he does have a brilliant blend of football ability and IQ. The issue for me is his role and his CBA percentage in particular. So he was a number 4 CBA guy in that midfield behind Newcombe, Nash and Worpel last year. And that was continuing this preseason, and it was continuing in the first half of round zero. So he was still the fourth banana. And yes, he scored 113 in a half as the fourth banana, but he had 3 goals and 6 free kicks for. Neither of those are sustainable. If you take those out, which I know you can't, but it's not that amazing. But still, the main reason that I've got him here, and I was really umming and ahhing this one. He could be in my high confidence if we know that Worpel's out for a while. So Worpel went down with an injury. At the time I'm recording this, I don't really know how long James Worpel's out for. It looked like an ankle. I heard people say syndesmosis. That can be many, many weeks. It could be just a couple. We'll see. So if Worpel's out for a while and it helps Day cement that number three CBA spot, I think that is good. That helps, obviously. He probably needs to be the number 3. I really think he needs to be the number 2 CBA mid to kind of average that 105, 110. So much like the last two guys, I can see Will Day averaging 100 quite easily. My confidence isn't as high as him to reach 105 as I think a lot of other people are confident in him. And it is just that role that I think he's still fourth banana even when Worpel comes out. And he might have, some more good games while Worpel's out. But also, he has a really, really tough run. I just talked about Collingwood's difficult run. So do Hawthorn. Go and have a look at Hawthorn's first 5 fixtures, and it is very tough. He could get tagged by Hewitt and Bedford and Drew in a row and average 90s. So that's something that I'm a bit worried about. I'm not too worried about his draw overall because after that it gets really, really, really easy. But it's just the fact that he's not the number 1 or number 2 CBA mid. And there are some players, I look at like Christian Petrarca, that can absolutely be a premium midfielder in Supercoach without being a number 1 or number 2 mid, but it's rare. Not many people can do it. And Will's an elite talent, but I'm just a little bit skeptical. Before this Worpel injury, I projected Day as kind of that 103 average. And that would still be a fine pick because he's well underpriced and he's a great option. With the Worpel injury, maybe you bump him up and maybe he does just crack that 105. But let's wait and see. That's why he's here. That's my justification. And now I've got 6 players for you that I'm actually really quite confident go 105 for the first time. They've never averaged 100, and I think they will go 105. So these are 6 players that I think you absolutely could think about starting, or you target in your draft because I think that they'll probably slide a little bit compared to what they'll average. But let's go. I know this is the bit everyone's been waiting for. So number 6, high confidence breakout player, Josh Daicos. Josh Daicos has averaged 99 playing on a wing before, and that's not really that juicy of a Supercoach position. Now he moves to a more profitable half-back role. What's not to like that? That guy just racks up the pill. Now, I know Dan Houston comes in, and that will probably cap Daicos' scoring. If Houston wasn't there, this could be a 110 guy. But with Houston there, I think it's probably more like the 105. But judging by the preseason games, it looks like Jeremy Howe's going to be the main kick-out guy, just from what we saw in the preseason, the end of last year. So maybe Houston and Daicos don't get those kick-ins and they just have to work it around the ground. So, Dan Houston limits him, Jeremy Howe taking kickouts limits him, but even with those factors, I'm quietly confident that Josh Dacos is fit enough and hungry enough to get everywhere around the ground to rack up touches at will. And I would not be surprised if both him and Dan Houston graze that 105 average for defenders. So Josh is someone that I'm really confident in, even without kickouts, even with Dan Houston. If both those things went his way, like I think it's 110, but even with those, I'm pretty confident it's 105. My number 5 high confidence breakout player is Max Holmes. The Max is a star on the rise. So he jumped from an average of 79 in 2023 to 99 last year, a 20-point jump. So he's already nearly at that triple figure mark. And just with a bit of continued development and potentially some more midfield time, I can see him hitting this 105 average quite comfortably. Holmes has only averaged 19 disposals per game over his career, so that's actually, it's well above the filter of 14 marks to get him into that, to make this list. But when I'm comparing to these guys I'm talking about, that's actually one of the lower marks for people on this list. But, 19 disposals, I see him blowing that number out of the water this season. I don't expect him to get near 110. I don't really think that many Geelong players, obviously Tom Stewart did in his day, but this team is just so versatile and they move people around willy-nilly that I don't see him being a 110, but I'm quite confident Max Holmes goes 105 this year. Now, my number 4 high confidence breakout player is Isaac Rankin. So Rankin, he only just met the filter bar with 14.2 disposals per game. So he only just cleared it. But we know that is because he played a lot of his career as a small forward. I mean, this time last year, Sam Flanders didn't make the filter I had at that time because he was around 14.5 disposals or something like that. But that was because he was sub and used as forward a lot. So sometimes the disposals can be a bit misleading, but I still want them to be able to get 14. And Rankin still does that, so he still makes the filter. And we know that he only averaged those 14 disposals because he's been a small forward a lot of his career. But now it seems like he's going to be moving into the midfield for a very high rate of CBAs. And in the preseason, he was actually their number 1 CBA guy, and he looked really good doing it. He was getting back in D50 for little chippy uncontested marks, and he didn't, there were a lot of people that were like, oh, that maybe wasn't as big a score as I wanted, but that role just looks prime. If Isaac Rankin can be in the back line taking chip marks, this could be a big year. And for someone that's played small forward their entire career, he actually has a really good contested possession rate. He does get a lot of contested ball, even when playing, in the forward line. So that's really promising. And even, if we just look at last year, in games where he had 30% CBAs last year, he averaged 108 SuperCoach. That's easily enough to clear my benchmark of having a breakout season, and I'm very, very confident that this happens for Isaac Rankin. My number 3 high-confidence breakout player is Ed Richards. So Ed Richards moved into the Bulldogs midfield in the second half of the season last year, and he averaged about 103 in that role. Pretty solid, actually very solid, that's quite good. But 103 isn't quite enough to meet my expectations of this breakout filter that I've put on. 105 is what we need. But in that time at the second half of last year, he was also the 3rd and 4th CBA guy at times. He was behind Treloar, he was behind Bond, and sometimes he was behind Libba. So this season he's touted to be the number 2 CBA option behind Bond, even when everyone was healthy. So even before Bond, Treloar himself got injured, there was talk that he'd be the number 2 CBA option and Treloar would take a dip to accommodate Ed Richards. And a whole pre-season training in this role, that can only help. In addition, we know Bont and Treloar are going to be missing round 1, and he plays North round 1, so it could be a nice little start. And it's actually going to be more than round 1 for Bont. It could be, quite a few weeks. So Richards is going to be one of the main guys in a Bulldogs midfield that always produces high point scorers. They're one of the teams that actually do have 3, sometimes even 4 midfielders average 100. Very few teams do that. So he's in a perfect team and a perfect role to just go bonkers here. So big fan of Ed Richards, very confident he goes past 105. And my number 2 guy, I know Dr. Supercoach community's been waiting for when I'll bring up Jai Newcomb. It's probably going to be no surprise to the community that I managed to create a breakout list with Jai Newcomb on it. He was my number one breakout guy last year, and it didn't quite work out. He actually averaged exactly the same in 2024 as he did in 2023, so he didn't move a cent. Honestly, I think I just went a year too early. Hawthorn were really bad to start last year, and so was Jai. I mean, Hawthorn lost their first 5 games and looked average, so did he. But when they got going at the back half of the last year, so did Jai Newcomb. He goes as Hawthorn go, and I think we all think Hawthorn are going to be a lot better this year. I mean, they just they just beat Sydney at the SCG in the wet in round 0. That is really impressive. A lot of people are tipping them to make finals. And that's really important for Jai, because in the second half of last year, when Hawthorn were doing really well, he averaged 112 in the post-bye, including finals. That's incredible. That's massive. And in his last 4 games of last year, he averaged 146. So this is a guy who can play, and when Hawthorn play well, he plays well. The thing with Jai here, I don't expect him to come out and average 112 this season, especially with the Hawks' first 5 games all being incredibly difficult, as I talked about with Will Day. But keep an eye out for Jai Newcomb once they get those games out of the way, so especially round 6 to 10, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to the halfway point of the season and we're like, oh shit, Jai Newcomb's averaging 106. Where'd that come from? Even with that tough run, I just think he's primed and it's ready and it's about to happen. The one metric I'm really watching for with Newcomb this year, and it kind of has annoyed me he hasn't done it the last few years, is his tackles. He came into the league as a tackling beast. I think he had 14 tackles or something in his debut, maybe set a record. I'm just going that off the top of the dome, but he had huge tackle numbers to start his career, and he's really, really dropped off in that metric lately. So over the last 2 years, he hasn't been great at tackling, and it's somewhere I think he can get it back and get up to 105s. And if he can get his tackles back up to that 6 or 7 per game mark, this is going to be a really, really good SuperCoach scorer. So it's coming. I told you last year it was coming. Maybe I told you a year too early, but it's coming, and I think it's coming this year, and I think it's coming from round 6 onwards. So let's just keep an eye on that one. But he's not my favourite this year. This year, my number 1 breakout candidate is the Jason Horne-Francis. If you remember my video from last year, I identified 4 piglets that were very young in their careers, could very easily go 105 with a few more years in the system and the right role. I haven't done that this year because there weren't as many there was just a quartet last year where I was like, wow, these 4 players are really good at footy. I think they're all a bit young. It's not going to happen yet. Maybe give them a couple of years. But he was one of them, and he was leading that charge. The others, being Ben Hobbs, Josh Ward, and Will Ashcroft, I think are still very good footballers. Hobbs and Ward especially just don't have the role at all, so that's not going to happen for them this year. Ashcroft doesn't, as I mentioned, number 3 CBA mid, probably doesn't quite have the role I want. Like I said, I want them to be number 1 or number 2 CBA mid at their club. But Jason Horne-Francis has that role. He's the first one of these little piglets to be given the green light, and he's going to take over this midfield in Port and make it his, especially with the Zach Butters injury for quite a few weeks. I mean, Rosie's just gone down with an ankle, but at the time of recording, I don't know how long it's going to be. It could be nothing. He could be playing round 1. But even if Butters and Rosie and Wines and Drew were there, I believe this is Jason Horne-Francis' midfield now. It's his as much as he wants, as many CBAs as he wants. It's his to take over. And look, one of the things I've found with him over the years is that he's amazing contested possession. He's powerful contested ball winner, clearance dominance, disposals. They all make him electric. I want to see his in tackles improve a bit, which I really think they will do just with him getting more CBAs. But the main metric that he lags behind a lot of these other guys in this list is marks. So what we want to see him is we want to see him working up and down the ground, popping up for cheap marks to boost his scoring. Like I mentioned that we saw Rankin doing that in the preseason and got me really excited. Jason Horne-Francis did that against St Kilda in the preseason too. He was everywhere. He was taking marks in the back line. he was often the bailout kick of defence, so whoever it was kicking out defence was actually kicking to him in a contested mark scenario, and he was taking them. So if he can continue that into the preseason proper, I mean, look out. I've set 105 as the benchmark for a breakout player. This could be 110 if things go Jason Horne-Francis's way. If he's a number one CBA mid, if he's getting up and down the ground for cheap marks, contested possessions stay up, his tackles go up a bit, I'm not putting a ceiling on this one. There's no way I don't start this guy now that we know that he's probably the number one CBA mid. And as a result, he's my high confidence breakout player, number one, best option that you can get. Whoa, that was a good rant, and we are there. So we've gone through my Ruckman. I've talked about that I wouldn't be surprised if McInerney and Luke Jackson go 100. I don't think it'd be much more. It's not that exciting. I talked about, I think Matt Flynn and Jordan Sweet absolutely have 100 SuperCoach averaging seasons in them. I'm just not certain it's this year. It could be. They both could surprise me. I think it might be more next year, but I also think they'll both be really good and outperform their price this year. Then I talked about the other positions, the defenders, mids, forwards, about, I gave you a whole list of players that I think are good at footy, but there's a bunch of them that don't have the role. And I talked about they need to be good at footy, and they need to have either a number one or number two CBA role at their team, or they need to be the number one or number two kick intaker at their team. Gave you a list of 14 names that I think are close and probably could get around 100, but probably not quite there. I then gave you 3 names in Finn Callaghan, Harry Perryman, and Will Day that I'm pretty confident go over 100, but I'm not certain, just for a few different reasons, if they break through into that upper tier of 105 plus. They could, and I wouldn't be surprised. That's why they're in my medium tier. I think they absolutely could. And then I gave you 6 names that I'm pretty confident go 105 plus for the first time in their career and just have a breakout season and just dominate. Josh Dacos, Max Holmes, Isaac Rankin, Ed Richards, Jai Newcomb, and the horny boy, Jason Horne-Francis. In that order, I think, Richards, well, actually even Rankin, Richards, Newcomb, and Hornet especially, I'm very, very big on. They're all different starting prices, all these players, so it doesn't mean you have to start them all. Like, Ed Richards is actually getting fairly expensive. He's he's not that much cheaper than a Jordan Dawson or a Christian Petrarca. So just because they're in this list doesn't mean you have to start them. Whereas someone like Will Day didn't quite make the super keen bracket, but he's so much cheaper. Or Finn Callaghan, like 440k, and I'm saying he can go 100. Actually, that could be a really, really good starting pick, even though I don't think he'll average as much as, say, a Jai Newcomb or a Ed Richards. There we go. Thank you very much for watching my 2025 SuperCoach Breakout Candidates video. Obviously, I use some data to cull down players into a bunch that I think are just really good at footy. Then I use my own insights to work out who has the right role to average 100 for a Ruckman or 105 for another position. But please comment below on YouTube if you think I have missed anyone, or if you think I'm too hot on anyone. Maybe comment below if you think I'm on to Jai Newcomb again this year. I love talking about that guy. I love watching him. But if you want to connect with me and the Dr. SuperCoach community more, you can find me on Twitter at pig_DRSC. I've put a screenshot of my account there on the video. You can find the main Dr. SuperCoach page at Dr_SC. But the main 2 places to get involved this year with Dr. SuperCoach are the YouTube channel that you're watching this on. So please subscribe, turn your notifications on, because I'm about to be dropping weekly captain recommendation videos to help you with your season, starting, obviously, round 1. And then, of course, the Dr. SuperCoach Patreon page is how you really get involved with this great community. You get access to a Slack group full of like-minded coaches that just love SuperCoach, love Barn Mees. Some of them love running, some of them love books, whatever it is. Some of them love Pokemon. We've got a channel to talk about anything we want. And you can get easy access to me, JB, Pistol, Chizo. I mean, you can DM us there on Slack. If you're a Patreon member, our DMs are open. You can send us your team and we help you through the season. So that's something I'd recommend anyone do if they're really interested. But until then, good luck this year, and I'll see you soon for the round 1 captaincy video.